So I understand that many of you watch my videos because you love to be engrossed in the second place advanced level of insight and commentary that I have on competitive TF2, or just like to learn about the game in general, whether it be competitive or otherwise. However, it might surprise you to learn that a lot of people just enjoy hearing me talk about anything, really. And I'm going to be leaning more into that today because of a few reasons, but one of which being I don't really have that many good ideas. So if you have anything you'd like me to talk about, let me know in the comments because I could use some inspiration. However, I want to be making a video today because of an upcoming event I'm going to. So I've talked in the past about LAN. For those of you who don't know, a LAN just stands for Local Access Network, but basically it's an in-person event. TF2, of course, is a multiplayer online game. However, you don't always want to play it online because there's factors at play that weigh, competition in one way or the other, such as a person's computer specs, or namely their ping and connection. And a LAN really equalizes that. So I have talked in the past about LAN and talked about this LAN I am going to as well as, how LAN is an important sort of cornerstone for competition in general and why the community places a lot of weight on LANs. But something I didn't really talk about is the more social aspect of it and the more personal connection and things like that. Which I want to talk about today. I'd like to sort of just share my experiences with LANs in general, the ones I've been to and the ones I haven't, and sort of talk about LANs as, an important cornerstone of the Sixes community. Because they are. And I think it's easy to take for granted for a lot of different games that are either primarily or started out very socially. The big example that everyone I'm sure is thinking of is something like Smash, where it very much did start out pretty much entirely in person, and online play is more of a recent phenomenon, at least among like Melee. So it's easy to sort of take something like that for granted. TF2 definitely not the case, and not only is TF2 primarily online, but on top of that, it's very difficult actually to organize in-person events because, you have teams of 6 people and you need to like rent venues with PCs and all the peripherals and stuff like that. You can't just, an example I can think of, I'm not much of a Smash player, but I did go to a weekly tournament at my university when I was going. And yeah, you literally just have a room and then a few people can bring setups and you're good to go. Because, it's just one person competing at a time, stuff like that. So logistically, it is kind of difficult to pull off, relatively speaking. But it's nonetheless an important event. Right. Where to begin? Well, in fact, let me actually look at my backpack here. I know this seems like an aside, but is there a way to look at just the badges? Because I do have... Damn, I need this scrap bank. Good lord. I do have some badges of different LANs. I have... Okay, these are RGL seasons. Oh, here we go. Look at that. Rewind 2 Tier 3 donor. Back in 2018. And yeah, so we'll get back to that. But basically, my involvement with competitive TF2 in general was very much fueled by LAN activities. And it's easy in a sort of post-pandemic world where in-person events kind of halted for quite some time to forget that LANs were a very regular occurrence. There was usually some form of LAN every, annually. And the really big events obviously weren't happening every year, but nonetheless were consistent. And it was really exciting to watch competitive play, even before I was a competitive player. When Rewind 2 was happening, I had not, well, maybe I had played like Uphug or something, or tested things out, played newbie mixes a little bit. But I was very much not a competitive player. I just liked watching the scene, right? And to be honest, that was more of a common occurrence back then, back in my day. There didn't seem to be so much of a divide as there seems to be today, where, you know, even casual players like myself actually, would still like keep up with what was going on competitively, if not be an outright fan of, you know, a certain team or the scene or what have you. But that's an aside. But yeah, I was absolutely a viewer of, and Rewind 2 is an event I remember specifically, really exciting one to see. And if I can, there's still memories, of course, I have of watching it. I know, I think it was the last round of the last map in Grand Finals to win the LAN on Process Last. Banny was getting chased. It was kind of a sketchy push, right? Froyo's pushing into last with the chance to win the round and win the entire tournament, right? And it was a sketchy push. Multiple players are dying. I believe Blaze was rolling out, and Banny is getting chased towards 5 and just kind of dodging, weaving, dancing around. And because every player was chasing Banny, no one was focusing on the point, which had a lot of cap time on it, and Blaze showed up and bombed the point. Banny, recognizing that no one can stop it in time, just decides to taunt and aura farm, and it did work out. So they did win, and that was very exciting. I remember as well, I forget which player it was, but I was a personal fan of the Australian team, Jasmine T. They were a lot of fun to watch, and I believe it was Jasmine T had a Widowmaker engineer play on Badlands that I still have. I've seen a clip of it since, but I don't know if I have it saved. But it was just a lot of fun, very memorable. And it's just fun to you know, see plays like that, and yeah, just watch good TF2. It's very memorable when, you know, the community at large is putting a lot of stock in what's happening. So Rewind 2 is definitely a big thing for me. I did watch Rewind 1 as well. Rewind 1 was probably, and maybe that was the one. No, I think Jasmine T was at Rewind 2. Nevertheless, I was very much paying attention to and watching these big events before even playing competitive TF2 at all, because it was still just a lot of fun. And then fast forward, and, you know, many years later, actually, I do end up playing the game competitively and decide to go to an in-person event of my own. The first, and we can actually go look at this badge, the first LAN I went to was DreamHack Atlanta in 2022. So, oh, it looks like I got a lot of kills on this last push. Sorry for looking at my backpack. Right. DreamHack Atlanta. It was a lot of fun, and it was an interesting experience because it was sort of a tacked on tournament. So this happened at DreamHack. DreamHack had a gigantic venue rented out, and there's just a ton of stuff going on. You just if anyone's been to a DreamHack, you just have like a ton of booths and stuff, and all sorts of people doing all sorts of things. I think there was maybe a Rocket League tournament happening in the venue as well. I know the streamer Ludwig, I guess, was doing some challenge or something where he was in a glass box. I don't remember the details, but that was in the same venue, in the same room. So every once in a while you could hear him. And it was very much tacked on. They just sort of sectioned off a place of the, you know, PC rental zone that people can, you know, pay for passes to play whatever games they want at the DreamHack, and said, okay, you can use these, and if you want to run your tournament, you can. So in many respects, it wasn't like a proper TF2 tournament, but it was still fun. So the big thing, of course, is being able to meet the people who you've been talking to for like years, but never actually met in person. So something like that is definitely special. And a lot of the memories I have from DreamHack Atlanta is not so much the competition itself, but which we will get to, but actually being able to meet people who you might not even be close friends with, but actually meeting them in person, there's definitely more of a connection there. And on that topic as well, I mean, I'm not someone who really starts beef with people, but there's definitely clashes of personality in the scene, and a lot of that does sort of dissolve after people meet in person, because they're like, oh yeah, no, this is just an actual person, so maybe it is a little weird to be acting all childish. Nevertheless, yeah, it's cool to put faces to names and, make friends who you might not have even really been close with otherwise, or people who are just sort of, acquaintances. Anyway, as far as the actual competition is concerned, at DreamHack Atlanta, we choked. Our team, you'll notice the badge was not it said participant, which means we got 4th place out of maybe like 7 teams. There weren't many, and keep in mind, of those 7, some of them are just like people who live kind of nearby, who are really, really new, and like maybe they only have like 4 actual TF2 players, and then they want to make a team, so they're like, okay, we'll get a couple friends who, we have that don't play TF2, but they play video games, like maybe they can just join. So, and that's something you see actually like pretty often in LANs, is a very huge skill gap, because all sorts of people are playing, and if a tournament is just like an open bracket and there isn't a distinction, then you can have invite teams participating with brand new players, which is definitely interesting and pretty unique to the LAN experience. Right, so we finished 4th, when we really should have been a 3rd place team, if not fighting for 2nd, but we kind of choked, and I had friends on the 3rd place team that still hold it over my head, which is funny. But the games themselves were definitely fun. It's always a little nerve-wracking to play at LAN at first, because you're expecting, well, you just have a lot of expectations. You don't want to be the guy who chokes at LAN. You want to be the one who is destroying everyone and, just a god. But I don't know, it's tough because you're putting a lot of weight on yourself, especially since there's a lot of external factors usually at play. I can think, well, we'll get to that when we get to the next event I've gone to, and as of now, the most recent one. So yeah, it's easy to put a lot of weight on your own performance and things like that. Speaking of performance, I think I generally played pretty well, and I think I generally do play pretty well at LANs, which I'm pretty proud of. Because yeah, it's just a fun setting to be playing well and to feel like you're participating well. Because that feels like when it really counts, even though, again, at the end of the day, it's all just video games. But yes, and we did play against, well, let's talk about the competition. So my team at this point was about main level. So for those of you unfamiliar with the North American divisions, you have Invite, of course, the highest level, and then the division below that is Advanced, and then the division below that is Main. There are, Advanced, Main, there's 6 divisions total. So Main is the 3rd highest. So we were about a main level team, and the 3rd place team that we lost to that had some of my friends on it was also a main level team, I would say, but probably a bit lower than us. Again, we kind of choked against them and really shouldn't have lost, but whatever. And the 2nd place team was probably an advanced caliber team. So we were expected to lose to them, but we could still keep it competitive if we were playing well, I think. And then the number 1 team was just like a high invite team. I know Habib was there. I think Bot Mode was there. Just a lot of either invite winners or invite finalists. So they were just messing around, right? I know Logan was there. Logan, very talented demo on G6, who you'll see at the upcoming LAN if you watch. I remember one of the matches we played against them. Logan was like perma sniping. I think Bot Mode played full-time direct hit because again they were just so far and above the other teams that they can really do anything and still be winning 5-0. And they did 5-0 us, of course. I will say, however, and this is my little cope, that one thing that I was pretty pleased with as far as my personal performance against the invite team was concerned was I went damage positive on, I think, every map that we played. Meaning that I dealt more damage than I took, which is really... It's not much, but I mean, let me have my cope that I played well against the invite team, right? Because it's at least something. So it's actually kind of fun. So getting completely rolled in TF2 is usually not a very fun experience. But there is a level of, yes, we're losing and we're losing 5-0, but there's still game happening, right? Where it's not just like you show up to mid and your team wipes and then you wipe on last and you lose, which does happen on occasion. Everyone's been there and it is not fun. But when A, you have the expectation of losing, and B, it's not so horrible. Like you can at least, yes, you're losing the mid, but you can at least, get kills. And sometimes you even win the mid. And you usually can't chain together enough victories long-term to like score a round or anything like that. But, fight to fight, there's still actual TF2 happening. And it can be a lot of fun to play. So yeah, I did actually enjoy playing the invite team at DreamHack Atlanta, despite the fact that we got completely rolled. Any other notes about Atlanta? I don't think so. Yeah, again, it was at a DreamHack, very tacked on. What it was missing was a lot of the actual social elements of a LAN, in the sense that the socialization was happening outside of the venue. It was happening with, the teams who already are friends and planning to do things outside of the designated times of the tournament and whatnot. Now that, in contrast to the RGL LAN I went to last year, I believe, in Philly, night and day experience, because this RGL LAN, which I did play in as well, was specifically a TF2 event. It was a venue filled only with, or basically only with TF2 players, and running a tournament there, which I liked a lot more for a few reasons. So for starters, I was on a stronger team and we had a pretty decent showing, all things considered. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But the social element was a lot better. It's a lot easier to talk to people and introduce yourself and just have a chat with someone when it's, in a setting like that, compared to a really loud and busy venue where, it's not clear that that's, the only thing it's set up for. Not the most sophisticated, and I can't even think of the word to use here for my lack of being able to describe things well. But nonetheless, it is a very different social dynamic when you are in a TF2 specific event rather than, just a little section of the, rental computers in a really huge venue. So that was definitely a lot better in that respect. And the competition was stronger as well. So at the RGL LAN, it was hosted for invite playoffs, in fact. So the top 4 invite teams were there to play the season's playoffs at LAN rather than online. However, there was a tacked on open bracket tournament, or rather, it was a little weird, to be honest, because there were different groups. So rather than just an open tournament that everyone who signed up that wasn't a top 4 invite team would just participate in, instead of those, I don't remember how many teams it was, probably like around 14, 15, maybe even 16, because I think there were 4 groups. All I know is that my team was one of the weaker teams in our group, and we basically got placed in the invite group for all intents and purposes, because our group it had 2 actual invite rosters who had played invite but just didn't make playoffs, so they were kind of designated to the open bracket, and I'd suppose an advanced caliber team. We're like on the cusp of advanced or invite, whatever. The distinction doesn't really matter. Point being, we are among pretty difficult competition, and yeah, we didn't really have expectations going into it either. Because again, it's hard to put together a perfect roster for a LAN event because different people have different capacities for being able to play. I know, some people are going to be busy, some people just can't travel, and you kind of have to work with what you've got. So a lot of the time, the LAN rosters they're more, friend teams and maybe some people off-classing just to fill out a roster because you'd rather compete than not. So in that respect, our team synergy could have been better, I guess. But overall, I think we did well, all things considered. We finished 3rd in our group, which is probably expected on paper. We would have either finished 3rd or 4th, just on paper. But we never lost to the 4th place team, which was nice, especially since I had some friends on that team who I have a bit of a rivalry with, I suppose. So that was definitely nice, because, after play trash talking someone online, and then being able to beat them at LAN consistently, that's definitely nice. Because even if you don't hold it, even if you aren't bringing it up all the time, it's still there, right? It's in the back pocket if you need to bring up the fact that you beat them at LAN. So that was a lot of fun. And the first day, actually, I think we played really well because the first place team we actually beat. And I think there is a demo of that. It might be the demo I used for the video where I talk about why LANs are so big, right? I guess I've talked about LANs 3 times because I've talked about why LAN competition is so valued. And I've also talked about international competition in general. So, yeah, we actually beat them. And I was severely sleep deprived because I was my sleep schedule wasn't great and I had an early flight. So I was operating on very little sleep, not only the night before the flight, but the night before that as well. So it was really bad. On top of the fact that I don't know if any of you remember I think it was CrowdStrike. There was some huge outage that affected airlines everywhere. That happened literally the morning of my flight. So I had to reschedule, and yeah, it was miserable. So I was severely sleep deprived. Still played well, though, and we beat an invite team. Now, we didn't beat them on the rematches. They still finished first, I think. But still, that was fun. A lot of fun, in fact. And it's very, very rewarding to not only have a performance where you do well, but that, has some weight to it. So I was very happy with that. And that was probably one of the highlights as far as the competition side of the Philly LAN is concerned. Besides that, though, again, the social side was just far, far better. And also, actually watching grand finals was such a great experience. because it's already exciting watching it's exciting watching competitive grand finals online, but when you're actually in the venue, it is different. And I think that series, I don't remember now which season it was. It may have been 13, may have been like 14. I'm not sure, but whichever season it was, that is one of my favorite grand finals ever. It's definitely competing with the season 6 first time Froyo was ever upset in like years and years and years, as just a really exciting series to watch. And yeah, being able to actually see that live in the venue was just a great experience, regardless of whether I participated or not in the tournament itself. So that was definitely great. Is there anything else about Philly? I don't think so. So maybe now we talk about the upcoming event. So yeah, in Denver, there's going to be a LAN for FiresideCasts, which is a TF2 organization that I do a lot of casting with. And this is the first event they're hosting, but also the first international event since Rewind 2, way back when, which is really cool. And I will say, as an aside, I do think that North America should do a better job of trying to make... Oh, we're going to need to find another demo here. I really don't know what to do, because there's going to be whatever. We'll pick a gully wash, who cares? Right. I think that North America in general could do a better job of hosting international events, because from what I can see, Fireside were able to get international competition at this LAN basically just by asking, like, hey, when are you actually available? Because I have heard from European teams, at least, that there's more of a stubbornness of like, oh, do you want to go to this event? By the way, this is when it's happening. Oh, you can't? Well, that's too bad. We're not going to adjust anything. Where I think being kind of flexible, or at least, inquiring, figuring out when works and stuff like that, definitely helps make this international competition happen, which to me is definitely an exciting thing to see. So there's, I suppose, that aspect. But it's going to be really cool to see how these teams from other regions that normally don't really get to play, don't get to play on an even playing field at all, just because of, continent-wide... Oh, I guess I changed my loadout in the demo here. Just because of a continent-wide gap, or ocean-wide gap, making the ping not really playable for one team or the other. It's an exciting thing to see, but also just, makes the actual tournament itself even more exciting, in the sense that, the same way that a LAN in general has a lot of weight put into the performances and stuff like that, it's even more so if it's a LAN where the best teams in the world from all these different regions are participating. It's like even stronger, which is nice. So this event, I'm actually not competing. This is going to be the first LAN I've gone to that I haven't competed. I will be participating. I'll be doing casting. So if you are just interested in hearing me ramble more in a casting environment, by all means, check that out. I will link all the stuff, that like a viewer's guide and where to watch this stuff at, in the description if you're interested. But I'm curious to see how it's going to go when, I'm not actually participating, because what's the word I'm looking for? Right. At Philly, one of the downsides, it could be an upside depending on your perspective, but we had a lot of very long, very competitive games that, yes, it's like nice to be playing TF2 and have really tense and exciting games in such an environment. However, it left very little time for actually socializing. Oh, I am sorry about that. Phone alarm. It left very little time for socialization at the actual venue, because we were and this is more of an our team problem, but we were playing pretty nonstop. So I am looking forward to being able to just relax a little and not actually compete. It's going to be kind of nice. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Besides that, however, I mean, again, the actual social part of LAN, from my experience, just gets better the more time goes on, because the people I met at DreamHack Atlanta, who I then saw at Philly, it was even more, I guess, natural, for lack of a better word. But, you know, there's no introductions. There's no, like, you've already met these people before. So it's very smooth in that respect. And that's definitely a nice aspect. So, like, the more LANs you go to, the more seamless it becomes socially, I suppose. And, I mean, you know, gamers and whatnot can be... I should have dead on that scout. Okay, there we go. Oh, what an awful name. I don't know who that is. Right. So, what was I saying? Yeah, gamers and social things and whatnot. It's just nice to, you know, already have done introductions and stuff like that. It becomes a lot easier. So the more events that I've gone to, the generally smoother things have gone. And I'm also really excited to meet the international teams, the Aussies and the Euros. It's going to be cool. Is there anything else I have to talk about LAN and sort of my personal connection to it? Yeah. I know this has been pretty rambly, pretty personal, but I just think that LAN events are definitely a very central part of the competitive lifeblood of TF2. And should I make a Highlander dig? I may as well end on a Highlander dig. Because a lot of people do, you know, in their minds, Highlander is a better format than Sixes, which you can just have your own opinions. I really don't care at all. However, Highlander doesn't have LANs. I don't know if Highlander has had, maybe there's been a LAN in history, but it's really not a thing for Highlander, and it is for Sixes. And that, in my mind, really separates them as well. Because, yeah, it's just a big thing, and something that, you know, the community can gather around. It's nice looking at different players streaming their scrims, and suddenly the entire community is getting involved. You have Australian viewers watching North American channels at probably god-awful times of day, just because it's exciting that the guys that they're playing with and that they know and that they're friends with get to compete with this North American competition and stuff like that. So it's just a really, really cool sort of phenomenon in the scene, and something I'm really excited to participate in. So yeah, this upcoming weekend, if you are looking for something to watch, then definitely check out the stuff I will post in the description about where to watch and what. And yeah, if you're going, feel free to say hi and whatnot. Yeah, I think that's probably all I have to talk about. Are we going for a back cap here? We're not going to make it in time, so we're taking some sort of Uber. If we get enough kills, we just win anyway. So that seems to be what's happening. Right. Anyway, I think that's all from me. Hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe you're just fast asleep here. That is fine too. But yeah, I'll see you all sometime in the future.